Well, it's exciting to be opening the Gospel of Luke to our first passage. Every week there's going to be a series of videos, usually early in the week, a video to help you read the passage and just begin to ask questions about the passage. In the middle of the week, a video to help you really dig in, try to answer those questions, understand how the passage works, and by the end of the week, a chance to be able to reflect. What does this passage mean, and how can we live out this passage? And in our first passage of Luke, we're just going to look at a small section. I've got it pulled up here for us to take a look at. And often there'll be longer sections of scripture for us to look at. But for now, a pretty simple one because we just want to ask some basic questions about the Gospel of Luke. So I'm going to read it and then we'll go through and ask some of the questions. So read along with me if you'd like. Since many have undertaken to set in order a narrative concerning those matters which have been fulfilled among us, even as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word delivered them to us. It seemed good to me also, having traced the course of all things accurately from the first, to write to you in order, most excellent Theophilus, that you might know the certainty concerning the things in which you were instructed. Now, again, not a very long passage for us to take a look at, but there's some really important ideas. And as we talked about in our introduction course on how to study the Bible, the first thing we want to do is just spend time reading the passage and asking questions. We don't even have to fully understand it. We just have to be able to ask good questions about the passage. So I want to mark up a few of those. I think one of the first things for us to ask is just to simply ask ourselves, who was Luke, first of all? If you notice when reading the passage, it doesn't specifically tell us much about Luke. It doesn't even say specifically Luke wrote it. So it's worth us spending some time asking, how do we know Luke's the author, and what do we know about Luke? He basically just says in here, it seemed good to me. So it'd be worth us addressing, who is this me? Who is Luke as the author? The second question we want to ask is, why did Luke write this gospel? It's interesting he says at the very beginning, since many have undertaken to set in order a narrative concerning those matters. Luke seems to be acknowledging that he knows that others have been writing gospels. We know about Matthew and Mark and John, and Luke from the beginning acknowledges here that it seems like there's actually been recorded gospels he knows about as well, but yet he's taken it upon himself to write an additional gospel or to write down his account. And if you look at what he says specifically, he says he has traced the course of all these things accurately from the first, that he's been researching and paying attention. And so it's worth us asking just simply, what's unique about this gospel? Why does Luke feel it's important for him to write a gospel when he may have even known about some of these other gospels that existed? A third question, one of the names that really stands out, is he says that he's writing to most excellent Theophilus. Now, if Theophilus is not a familiar name to you, that's all right. It's not a common name. It shows up here in the beginning of Acts. And so since the book in many ways seems to be addressed to Theophilus, it's worth us asking, I think, who is Theophilus and why does Luke specifically include him here? And then I think the third question that's worth us asking is just, of all the places we could begin our study, of all the books we could have picked out, why the Gospel of Luke? Luke says in verse 4 that he's writing to Theophilus so that Theophilus might know the certainty concerning these things in which he had been instructed. So what does it mean for us to read the Gospel of Luke in such a way that it begins to give us certainty or confidence? Why is Luke's Gospel in particular a good place for us to start, and how does it shape that certainty, that confidence we might have in faith? So, not a long passage for us to look at today. Feel free, read through it on your own again a few times. I think you could read it every day this week and just continue to ask good questions. To make a quick list for us, we're going to try by the middle of the week to just ask, who was Luke? What do we know about Luke? What do we know about this gospel? So, why does he write this gospel? I think a third question for us is Theophilus. Who is this Theophilus, and why is it that this book, this gospel, has been addressed to him? And then I think the final question we want to ask ourselves is, we want to just ask ourselves, why are we choosing to start here? If we answer this question well, if we really understand why we're taking weeks to study the Gospel of Luke, I think it'll build that curiosity and help motivate us to dig in deeper. So I think a good fourth question is just, why this gospel? So we'll be back together soon, and we can begin working in more detail on some of these, talking about how we actually research these items and answer questions about these items. But I think that's a good place for us to start the Gospel of Luke. I'm looking forward to the time we'll get to spend together reading and studying it.